leadership, behaviour difficult to justify, too little thought given to what was happening across the country. It may have been a short summary of the Partygate report, but it was damning.
Will you take responsibility, Prime Minister?
The PM set out with an apology.
I want to say sorry. And I'm sorry for the things we simply didn't get right, and also sorry for the way that this matter has been handled.
But the Commons was brutal. First, the full frontal attack.
By routinely breaking the rules he set, the Prime Minister took us all for fools. He held people sacrificing contempt. He showed himself unfit for office.
Then this from his own backbenches.
Either my right honourable friend had not read the rules, or didn't understand what they meant, and others around him, or they didn't think the rules applied to number 10. Which was it?
And for those who mourned loved ones while parties took place, the report's findings seemed to confirm their worst fears.
You broke the rules, the rest of us stuck by the rules, and we grieved. We grieved in silence. That's unforgivable.
12 parties in the place behind me are now being investigated by the police, including, it was revealed by Sue Gray, one in the PM's own flat. But has a promise to reform the number 10 operation and a plea to wait for the full report bought him more time. Our team has been all over Westminster on this dramatic day. We'll bring you the latest. Also tonight, a big government U-turn on jabs, why plans for compulsory vaccines for NHS workers are being reviewed. Away from the frozen Ukraine border, a heated showdown at the UN. America accuses Russia of undermining international peace. And football news to warm the heart. Christian Eriksen, who almost died on the pitch, starts a new life in the Premier League at Brentford.
This is ITV News at 10 with Julie Etchingham in Downing Street.
Good evening from Downing Street, where it has been another dark day for the Prime Minister over what happened after hours or even within the working day in the building behind me here. We got a sense of how dark, first from the scaled-back report from Sue Gray, and then from reaction to it from Conservative backbenchers. The Gray report finally arrived behind this famous black door, but despite being curtailed by the live police investigation, it pulled no punches. Indeed, the police are now formally investigating 12 of the 16 Downing Street gatherings that she gathered evidence on. One was Mr Johnson's birthday, another in his flat. Among that evidence are 300 photographs. At the heart of Sue Gray's write-up were a failure of leadership inside number 10 here and a failure to match what the rest of the country was doing at the time. Mr Johnson apologised in Parliament again this afternoon. His solution, a new senior civil servant to run the number 10 operation and an overhaul of how government is run. Not surprisingly, that was not enough for those on the opposition benches and some on his own side too. Tonight he met his MPs. By all accounts, he got a slightly better reception.
It is the privilege of a Prime Minister to live here, their job to lead here, and their duty never to lie here. Today, some light would finally be shed on the truth, even if it wasn't fully illuminating. At dawn, Boris Johnson began his day at Tilbury Docks.
OK, got it.
A delayed report has given him time for political manoeuvres, but at 20 past 11, it finally landed in his email. A quick change back home.
Will you take responsibility, Prime Minister?
It was time to face MPs over its findings. The Prime Minister and the report into parties closely guarded by police. Their own investigation stripping out much of its contents, but not its conclusions.
I now come to the statement, Prime Minister,
which contradict much of what he's previously said here.
Firstly, I want to say sorry. And I'm sorry for the things we simply didn't get right, and also sorry for the way that this matter has been handled. And it's no use saying that this or that was within the rules, and it's no use saying that people were working hard. This pandemic was hard for everyone. Mr. Speaker, I get it. and I will fix it.
It is an almighty mess. In total, the report by Sue Gray looked into 16 gatherings during the pandemic, including 3 revealed by ITV News. A garden party on the 20th of May 2020, which over 100 staff were invited to. The Prime Minister's birthday party on the 19th of June that year. And a Christmas party on the 18th of December, alluded to by advisers in a video leaked to us last year, which sparked the inquiry. The report concludes in civil servant speak that the behaviour was difficult to justify, with failures of leadership and judgment, too little thought given to what was happening across the country, and adds that the excessive consumption of alcohol was not appropriate in a professional workplace.
By routinely breaking the rules he set, the Prime Minister took us all for fools. He held people sacrificing contempt. He showed himself unfit for office. They think the Prime Minister should do the decent thing and resign. Of course he won't, because he is a man without shame.
For others, the anger was explosive.
But know that this Prime Minister has lied and misled the House.
The SNP's leader thrown out of the Commons for his outburst.
I ordered the honourable member to withdraw immediately from the House.
But it was the quiet calm of Conservatives which proved most cutting. One past Prime Minister must surely have enjoyed this.
So either my right honourable friend had not read the rules, or didn't understand what they meant, and others around him, or they didn't think the rules applied to number 10. Which was it?
No, Mr. Speaker, that is not what the Gray report says.
But there were more who'd read it differently.
When he kindly invited me to see him 10 days ago, I told him that I thought he should think very carefully about what was now in the best interests of our country and of the Conservative Party. And I have to tell him he no longer enjoys my support.
The one I recall attending was my grandmother's funeral. I didn't hug my siblings, I didn't hug my parents. I gave a eulogy, and then afterwards I didn't even go to her house for a cup of tea. I drove back 3 hours from Kent to Staffordshire. Does the Prime Minister think I'm a fool?
No, Mr. Speaker.
12 of the parties are no longer just a political but a police matter. The Met's even investigating an alleged gathering in the Prime Minister's own flat on the night Dominic Cummings left number 10.
We had a bundle of material provided to us just Friday, which is well over 500 of pieces of paper, about a ream and a half we received, and over 300 photographs.
She was the matriarch of our family.
Tina Andrew had 3 children, 10 grandchildren and 9 great-grandchildren. But these are the images they took on one of the days Downing Street partied. Fewer than half of her family could attend her funeral.
He needs to go. You were having the knees up while I was burying my mum. You broke the rules, the rest of us stuck by the rules, and we grieved. We grieved in silence. That's unforgivable.
Paul Brand, News at 10, Westminster.
Well, in Parliament this afternoon, Sir Keir Starmer said if Mr Johnson would not resign, it was up to Conservative backbenchers to force him out. They can try to do that if 54 submit letters of no confidence. But after the Prime Minister met them and apparently reassured many of them, it seems once again they are giving him the benefit of the doubt.
At first, the Prime Minister was very clear.
There was no party.
But then
his fictional party was a business meeting.
Anger from Tories.
He's damaging the entire Conservative brand.
And the public.
Evening, Prime Minister! For now.
Saying sorry.
I want to apologise.
And then this demand.
In the name of God, go.
Today there was anger from a number of Conservatives in Westminster and out. One senior figure said that any other Prime Minister would have resigned.
I am upset, and I'm upset because, not just because of things that myself and others that are in my close family and circle of friends missed and had to give up. But, you know, I was working in the Scottish Parliament. I had constituents that lost businesses. I had people that feel guilty that they didn't go to the care home to see their parents, that they didn't hug a friend at a funeral because they played by the rules. And now they look at what happened in number 10 and they feel like idiots. and they shouldn't be made to feel like that.
I think there's no doubt the Prime Minister is in very serious trouble. If he cannot establish a basis of trust, then public opinion will not forgive him for what has come out of the Grey saga.
Are you upset to see so many of your colleagues so angry about this?
Which I thought there was, of course, a few that were very critical. The vast majority of MPs in the House of Commons are full square behind this Prime Minister.
Do you think the PM got the tone right there?
I think he did get the tone right. I think he was contrite. I think he apologised, but he also set out the actions he needs to take forward.
The Prime Minister has just met with MPs in a room in this building, and from what I've been told, he got a largely positive response. One of his critics actually came out of the meeting and said that they felt colleagues had been deluded, but they admitted there's no way that there will be 54 letters of no confidence right now. But there was one resignation. Angela Richardson stepped down as a ministerial aide to Michael Gove. And with a police investigation underway, others made clear this is not the end of the story.
The police have to follow the evidence wherever it goes, and if they choose to take action, then consequences have to flow. Precisely what that's going to be, I think, is a bit idle for me to speculate about. But, you know, this is a serious matter, and the police need to be given the space to have a thorough investigation.
These Conservative members in Bristol aren't waiting to make their minds up.
You're not really sorry, you're sorry that you got caught. You know?
Yeah.
It is exactly like that.
It's quite sad for me because I had a lot of faith in him. He's let a lot of people down and he's let me down.
The PM hopes an overhaul of the Downing Street operation, which allies say will see personnel changes, will calm the mood for now. Anoush Gristana, News at 10.
Well, as Sue Gray's initial report puts it, not only did events in Downing Street not meet the high expectations of those working at the heart of government, they didn't reach the standards of behaviour expected of the entire British population at the time. In other words, whilst most people were sticking to the letter and the spirit of the rules, some in and around number 10 were not. We've been to one of the so-called red wall seats that went Conservative at the last election, Bolsover in Derbyshire, to see what they make of Sue Gray's pared-back report.
Like so many, people here were hoping rather more would be revealed as the sun came up on publication day in what was once a fortress in Labour's red wall. For the first time in the long history of this colliery band, Boris Johnson's personal popularity helped elect a Conservative MP here. Now support for him has fallen silent. Would you support him again?
Him, not particularly, no. He's lost the grounds to take any form of moral stance with me.
I'm absolutely appalled with his behaviour and the way he's handled it. He's just passing the buck all the time.
Few here will have had their minds changed by the scant new detail in Sue Gray's update. In the Coffee Cup Cafe, there was anger. They still don't know what really went on in Downing Street.
It's all been whitewashed over and hung out for weeks so that we'll all eventually forget it all.
I wouldn't vote Conservative again.
He was good on some things, but he's really let everybody down.
He should resign. You know, there's no question of that. I don't need to wait for a report.
From behind his shop counter, Ali's heard confidence in the Prime Minister draining away. But with the cost of living rising, he tells me calls for him to resign are misplaced.
It will be more damaging and time will be wasted more.
To find a new Prime Minister?
To find a new Prime Minister and for him to settle down.
But for some, this is more personal.
My dad always said, if anything was to ever happen to him, just give him a kiss on his forehead and send him on his way. But we couldn't even do that.
Mark Green died from COVID during the first lockdown. His stepdaughter was a Boris Johnson supporter, but says his apologies so far aren't good enough.
Personally, I'd be happy for him to stay. More than anything, I want him to consider what people like us went through. Just acknowledge that we made all those sacrifices whilst he didn't, and how that actually makes us feel.
With his moral authority under siege like never before, and with plenty they still don't know, people here may need more convincing that he does get it and can fix it. Ben Chapman, News at 10, Bolsover.
And I'm joined by our political editor, Robert, to take us through what we've witnessed today. So it was dramatic here. It was brutal in the Commons this afternoon, Robert. Things seem becalmed a little this evening. Where are we at?
A little bit, maybe. I mean, there was an extraordinary event this evening, an emergency meeting of the Tory party's backbenchers. And one of the MPs present said it was as though the Prime Minister was reapplying for his job, as though that vote of no confidence had actually already started. And he said to those MPs, look, I owe you everything, I'm only here at your discretion. He could still lose his job. I don't expect the vote of no confidence in coming days if the Met Police find that either at the flat in his party or the bring your own booze party or the birthday cake party, he broke COVID laws. If a Prime Minister breaks the law, very difficult to see how he survives. Now, the issue here for some is a moral one. Did he follow the appropriate moral standards? For others, it's about competence. You will have noted that the Met Police are now investigating 12 separate events. Now, only one of those was referred by the Prime Minister for investigation by Sue Gray, or in fact her predecessor at the Cabinet Office. All the others were found by Sue Gray. You'll remember that initial event, the Christmas party, was originally revealed by the Mirror. We then followed it up with our extraordinary scoop about the Downing Street press conference with Allegra Stratton. If at any of those points the Prime Minister had simply put his hands up and said sorry, maybe this whole thing would have gone away. Instead of which, he is facing the crisis of his life. The Tory party has slumped in the polls, and Tory MPs are still wondering whether he's the right man for the job.
OK, Robert, thank you very much indeed for that. And later on in the programme, I'll be joined by Paul, who, of course, broke the stories about a number of the parties behind those walls. Robert, thank you. Well, meanwhile, the work of government goes on, and it was always going to be controversial forcing NHS workers in England to have coronavirus vaccinations. And just as crunch time approached, the government backed down this evening. Crunch time because, to meet the April deadline, staff had until Thursday to start their vaccination programme. The Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, said the milder Omicron strain meant he would review the decision. Now, social care staff want to know whether making them get vaccinated last year will be reviewed as well.
So you're not going to be happy with bunk bed anymore?
Tamara was facing the biggest dilemma of her life. Get vaccinated by Thursday or lose her job as a midwife. But that dilemma has just gone away.
Today I felt like at work there was a much more better morale in the office.
She's had COVID twice and doesn't agree with being forced into having a vaccine. Nearly half her immediate colleagues feel the same.
It was all a question of us thinking and pondering the thoughts and the science. So whether someone was going to get it or not, I felt they felt like that's not a choice anymore, and that's really a fundamental principle of our profession.
You don't think it's necessary for you to have it, given that you're working with vulnerable women?
Well, I feel like I've had COVID twice now.
You have, but they may not have done.
And so I feel like if I continue to take the appropriate approaches, which is to wear my PPE, which I do every day, I do my lateral flows before I go to work. If I feel unwell, I stay at home.
With an estimated 77,000 NHS workers still not vaccinated, the Health Secretary has been under pressure to rethink the policy or lose thousands of critical staff. Today, he said Omicron had changed things.
I believe that it is no longer proportionate to require vaccination as a condition of deployment through statute. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, today I am announcing that we will launch a consultation on ending vaccination as a condition of deployment in health and all social care settings.
Around 40,000 lost their jobs in the care sector in November when they were told they had to get the vaccine.
That's the hardest thing you've ever had to do. Goodbye to everybody.
Louise was one of them and hopes today may change things for her now too.
If they are addressing it with the NHS, then surely they are going to readdress it for the carers as well. And rightly so, because there's going to be some, not very happy people out there. Why should we be the ones that have had to suffer?
Whether it's compulsory or not, many point out the fact remains the vaccine works.
Because vaccination reduces the possibility of becoming infected, and because there is some evidence that it can reduce transmission, it does seem logical that a person working in a healthcare setting ought to be willing to have the vaccine.
Tamara doesn't know what she would have done if the government hadn't changed its mind. She's just pleased she'll still have a job on Thursday. Emily Morgan, News at 10.
On that other focus of government right now, Ukraine. The Prime Minister was supposed to talk this afternoon to Russia's President Putin. The Grey Report put paid to that. Mr Johnson is due in Ukraine tomorrow for talks with its president about Russian aggression. The Foreign Secretary Liz Truss won't be going with him after all. She's just tested positive for COVID. Meanwhile, at the United Nations in New York, Russia accused the West of whipping up tensions over Ukraine.
They are willing to be the last line of defence, resisting a Russian invasion. The men and women of the 135th Territorial Force are not professional soldiers, they're civilians who know how high the stakes may get. Hannah is a keyboard warrior Monday to Friday for an IT firm, but on Saturdays she's barely recognisable, learning to handle a weapon in case soon her life depends on it.
I think that in our times it's very important even for girls to be able to protect ourselves, our family.
Her boyfriend Vladimir is also here for these war games, which have suddenly become much more realistic. You're willing to lay down your life, you're willing to die if the Russians invade?
For sure, I mean, that's something that you have to accept. I don't like the idea of being dead, but I'm ready for that. I mean, I have to accept this fact that this is war, and at war people die.
These men and women are giving up weekends with their families to hone their weapon skills in the expectation that one day they may have to use them to defend their homeland. Those who've devoted their lives to diplomacy to resolve conflicts are still hopeful war can be averted.
I think that there is a serious danger of a major Russian escalation. I also think if Western policy gets no weaker, the chances of Putin actually doing it are well under, or say in the 25% range.
But at the UN Security Council tonight in New York, the US suggested the odds of invasion were much more finely balanced.
Colleagues, the situation we're facing in Europe is urgent and dangerous. And the stakes for Ukraine and for every UN member state could not be higher.
But Russia claims this crisis has been concocted by the West with its alarmist rhetoric.
No threat of a planned invasion into Ukraine has been made from the lips of any Russian politician or public figure over all of this period. Rather, at all levels, we have been categorically rejecting such plans.
While Russia protests its innocence, it's also continuing to move troops and hardware to the region in numbers not seen for decades. Dan Rivers, News at 10, Kiev.
When a 19-year-old British woman said that she'd been raped by up to a dozen Israeli men while on holiday in Cyprus, she wasn't believed by a Cypriot court. She ended up being convicted of public mischief. 2 years on, the country's Supreme Court has overturned that conviction. Her lawyers say it's an important ruling for women's rights. Now they want her original allegations against the Israeli tourists to be reinvestigated.
Imagine telling the police you've been the victim of rape, only to find yourself on trial. Your right to anonymity barely protected by a makeshift scarf. That was the reality for this teenager. And it sparked a wave of protest, right up till the moment a judge overturned the now 21-year-old's conviction, to her lawyer's delight.
The young and vulnerable woman was not only mistreated when she reported the rape to the police, but then she was put through a trial process that was manifestly unfair.
It was July 2020 in the resort of Ayia Napa when she reported being raped. Questioned without a lawyer by police, she says she was pressured to retract her account. When she did, she was imprisoned for a month and eventually given a suspended sentence of 3 years, to the disbelief of legal experts who stepped in to fight her case.
I've spoken to her earlier and her mother. There's a mixed sense of emotions, relief, but joy also. She has been totally vindicated. She has shown such strength and fortitude throughout and courage, and we're immensely proud of her.
Sentiments echoed in a statement from her family saying, whilst this decision doesn't excuse the way she was treated by the police or the judge or those in authority, it does bring with it the hope that my daughter's suffering will at last bring positive changes in the way that victims of crime are treated. The young Israelis she accused of rape could now face a full investigation. Their lawyers stressing tonight that the ruling doesn't mean they committed any offence. But their alleged victims' refusal to remain silent has at last been recognised as courage rather than a crime. Rachel Younger, News at 10.
The detectives investigating allegations of rape and sexual assault have been given extra time to question the rising Manchester United star Mason Greenwood. He's still in custody, where he's been since yesterday afternoon. The club has suspended him from playing or training until further notice. Parts of northern Britain hit by back-to-back storms over the weekend are still without power. 40,000 customers were affected in northern Scotland. Storm Malik hit on Saturday, followed by Storm Corrie late yesterday, which brought with it winds of more than 90 miles an hour. South of border Northern Power Grid said 7,000 of its customers in Northumberland and Tyne and Wear who had no electricity were now mostly reconnected. The rest would be by tomorrow. Incidentally, the power of Storm Malik helped break the UK record for electricity generated by wind power. The New York judge due to hear sexual assault civil case against Prince Andrew has made a formal request that a former equerry of the Prince give a sworn statement as part of the case. Lawyers for the Prince's accuser, Virginia Giuffre, have asked for evidence from Robert Olney and requested the judge's help. Prince Andrew has denied all the allegations against him and says he wants to be tried by a jury. The judge has asked the High Court in London for help in obtaining Mr Olney's statement. It means a British court must now decide whether to become involved in the case. Now, perhaps the most uplifting deal of football's transfer deadline day is the return to English football of Christian Eriksen, who nearly died on the pitch during the Euros last summer. He collapsed when his heart stopped while playing for Denmark. 7 months of rehab on, and now a pacemaker's been fitted. The former Spurs midfielder has agreed to play for another London club, Brentford, for the next 6 months.
The day 7 months ago when football held its breath as Christian Eriksen was resuscitated after collapsing during Denmark's opening match at the Euros. Signing for Brentford marks a remarkable comeback for a man who was technically dead that day for several minutes and has since had a defibrillator fitted.
I'm happy to announce that I've signed for Brentford Football Club, and I can't wait to get started, and hopefully I'll see you all very soon.
His new boss, Thomas Frank, who managed Eriksen as a teenager, said today the club had taken an unbelievable opportunity to bring in a world-class player. Eriksen has come back to the Premier League after 2 years with Inter Milan because, in Italy, you are not allowed to play with an inbuilt defibrillator. Here, there is no such constraint. Eriksen's heart rhythm is now regulated by a device known as an ICD. It's connected by wires and monitors the heartbeat. If it detects a dangerous rhythm, it will trigger electric pulses to try to correct it. If that doesn't work, it can send further shocks to restore a normal rhythm.
It's got a very clever computer in it, but it needs to be personalised. And if that's the case, then there's no reason why you couldn't undertake even aggressive sport.
Eriksen revealed recently his recovery has been driven by his dream to play for Denmark again on the world stage.
My goal is getting to the World Cup in Qatar. I'm going to the World Cup. I want the chance. I'm going.
The first part of that journey starts in West London, where they can't wait to welcome him. It will be quite an emotional day when he makes his debut here, I imagine.
Yeah, I think so. I think all the fans will get behind him straight away. I think everyone in the football world is happy to see him back, so it'll be good.
I think it's fabulous news for him as a player and also for Brentford.
Given all he's been through, if he does get to wear a Danish shirt again, it will be hard to find anyone who begrudge Eriksen that very special moment. Steve Scott, News at 10.
Well, to end tonight, we return to what might happen next now that we've seen something of Sue Gray's findings. Paul, whose exclusive reports uncovered a number of the parties here, joins us now. I mean, it's clear, Paul, this story is not over yet. attention will now turn to the Met investigation. Now we've got the elements that Sue Gray put out today.
That's right, Julie, because tonight the Prime Minister's asking his party to forgive, but the police aren't yet ready to forget. Far from it. They are just starting the process of working their way through an extraordinary amount of evidence. Quite something when you consider that for 2 months they've been telling us repeatedly there isn't enough evidence to investigate any of the parties that we've uncovered. But Sue Gray has essentially done much of their homework for them, and now they're going through these 500 documents, 300 photographs. They'll digest all that this week, then begin contacting people of interest, asking them to answer a series of questions via email or post. Those questions could even go to the Prime Minister himself. We asked the police today, look, how long is this all going to take? Is it going to be weeks or months? They couldn't answer that. They just said it would be fast-tracked. On the one hand, this buys the Prime Minister some time, but it costs him political capital. All this drags on for much longer, unless, of course, his party acts first and takes action.
OK, Paul, thank you very much. I know you'll be watching every move. Thank you for that. And that is almost all from us this evening. In Parliament today, we saw a Prime Minister once again fighting for his political life, rocked by the pared-back version of the Sue Gray report and by attacks from his own side. His meeting with backbenchers tonight may have gone a bit better. Whether or for how long he stays in number 10 is in their hands. The details of what happened here, behind closed doors on Friday nights, on birthdays or at leaving dues, will be revealed eventually by the police. The danger for the Prime Minister is far from over. From all of us here in Downing Street, good night.